Today's show is sponsored by Vincero Watches, which is an American company building super premium wristwatches starting at only about $150. And they're giving you 15% off when you go to davidpakman.com/Vincero. I've put the link underneath this video. Today's show also sponsored by Blinkist, which is the app that lets you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. You can try Blinkist totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. That link is underneath the video as well. It's Labor Day and we're here. Why are we here? We take federal holidays off. We're here because we're trading Labor Day for an entire week off next week. We will be off all of next week, much needed for the staff, and then back with you for the debates and through the election. But good thing we're here today because one of the biggest stories of the last couple of months in terms of its possible impact on the presidential election broke over the weekend, which has now been quadruply corroborated despite Donald Trump claiming it is all fake. This is a story in which The Atlantic broke a story claiming that officials who were on a trip with Trump to France say that Trump called troops who died losers and suckers. And it is a hugely instructive story from the perspective of the evolution of damage control, because the initial story was just in The Atlantic and it talked about Donald Trump repeatedly disparaging the intelligence of service members, saying keep wounded service members out of military parades. It wouldn't look good. And it even goes on to say that, I don't know if you remember that incident in 2018 where Donald Trump decided while in France not to go and honor the troops at a cemetery near Paris, that it was because of rain. And these individuals who have come forward said it had nothing to do with rain. Trump was worried his hair would look bad if it got wet. And he didn't think it was important, again, to honor those who were losers and suckers. Quoting Trump as saying, "Why should I go to that cemetery? It's filled with losers." Trump also, during that trip, referred to a conversation referred to more than 1,800 Marines who lost their lives at Bella Wood as suckers for getting killed. Now, Donald Trump came out and said it's all fake. Trump administration officials came out and said it's all lies. Except then the Associated Press corroborated it. Senior defense official with firsthand knowledge of events and a senior U.S. Marine Corps officer said to the Associated Press, the report in The Atlantic is correct. White House continued to insist it's fake and it's phony. And then CNN triply corroborated it. Donald Trump referred to fallen U.S. service members in crude and derogatory terms during that trip in November of 2018 to France. And then they said it's all fake. And then Fox News quadruply corroborated it. Take a look at this. This is Fox News now.
John, I've spoken with two senior U.S. officials who were on the trip to France who confirmed to me key details in the Atlantic article and the quotes attributed to the president. My source, a former Trump administration official, told me when the president spoke about the Vietnam War, he said it was a stupid war. Anyone who went was a sucker. The president would say about American veterans, what's in it for them? They don't make any money. The source said it was a character flaw of the president. He could not understand why someone would die for their country. Not worth it. Regarding the French trip to mark the end of World War I, according to this former official, the president was not in a good mood. French President Macron had said something that made him mad. He questioned why he had to go to two cemeteries. Why do I have to do two? His staff explained he could cancel, but he was warned, they, the press, are going to kill you for this. The president was mad as a hornet when they did, according to this source. When asked if the president could have driven to the Aisne-Marne cemetery, this former official said confidently that there was not a security reason not to drive to the cemetery, which was about 40 miles from Paris. Quote, the president drives a lot. The other world leaders drove to the cemeteries. He just didn't want to go. Regarding the president's July 4th military parade planning, during a planning session at the White House after seeing the Bastille Day parade in 2017, President Trump said regarding the inclusion of wounded guys, quote, that's not a good look. Americans don't like that. Regarding Senator McCain, the president, according to this source, just hated John McCain. He always asked, why do you see him as a hero? Two sources confirmed the president did not want the flags lowered after McCain died, but others in the White House ordered them at half-mast. There was a standoff, and then the president relented.
That is Fox News corroborating and expanding the story. It's even worse than initially reported, actually, based on Fox News's additional reporting. I'm starting to think the story may be true. And of course, it tracks completely with Donald Trump's brand and a lot of this stuff he came close to saying in public, including about John McCain, the late Republican Senator John McCain, who had been captured and held as a prisoner of war. Donald Trump saying he prefers soldiers who don't get captured, and even tweeted about it. I'll tell you about that in a moment. The internal chaos that this caused at Fox News, fascinating, because you had at one point within hours, the opinion people saying this is all fake, and the news side saying we've been able to independently confirm these reports. And Trump fundamentally is not able to understand the concept of someone doing something that's not completely self-centered and greedy. He has an inability to do that. And, you know, when this story broke, you had some people on the left saying, Trump is right, these people are suckers. Who the hell would join the military? I do think it's important to distinguish between supporting the troops and supporting individual wars and what the military does. I recognize, for example, that when George W. Bush took us into the harebrained, misguided Iraq war, we didn't have a draft in which I could have been drafted potentially because we have a volunteer army and people actually volunteer. Now, we often send them to the wrong wars. We use the troops in disgusting ways for political battles, the way George W. Bush did. But nevertheless, I don't think it makes sense to denigrate the individuals as the suckers. We have a military industrial complex that is the problem. We have a deranged foreign policy apparatus. And, you know, if you do believe that those who go and fight are suckers, tone down the military apparatus. Trump has done the opposite. Trump simultaneously brags about making the military bigger than ever, but then says that the individual troops are suckers and losers when they actually go and get killed. And why is that? It's because Trump doesn't care about the individuals in the military, but Trump is glad to use the military as an institution for his benefit when he can. It's very much on brand, in fact. Could this be Trump's 47% moment, thinking back to Mitt Romney in the 2012 campaign? It's possible. This, you know, a lot of these things that happen don't directly relate. They don't directly affect constituencies that Trump needs. If this is a case where, if you look at Florida and the heavy military presence in Florida, and Florida being an important battleground state where it could determine, it certainly is much more likely than Massachusetts or California to determine the winner of the presidential election. Disparaging the troops in this way, to the extent that people will believe it, could actually make a difference. And again, anybody doubting it, it's been quadruply corroborated. It tracks with things Donald Trump has said publicly. Remember, John McCain, not a war hero because he was captured, attacking Gold Star family, the Khan family. This is only half a step further than what Trump has done publicly. And in fact, Donald Trump once did retweet that McCain is a loser. Trump retweeting in 2015 an article from Fitz News. Donald Trump, John McCain is a loser. Now, the perspective there was the election of 2008, but Trump very critical of McCain, including for having been captured. And by the way, this is maybe the most interesting thing Pete Buttigieg has done. He was interviewed on Fox News about this story, and he used Fox News's own confirmation of the story while on Fox News against them. Take a look at this.
Again, I'm looking at the internet right now. Fox News itself has confirmed many of the details of this story. So
the real question is not, to me, did Trump do this? It seems almost certain that he did. The question is, number one, what else is going to come out between now and November? Because The Atlantic is saying there will be much more, that this is only the tip of the iceberg. And number two, will this affect Trump with constituencies he needs, like the military, I believe that it could. I want to hear from you. I'm on Twitter @dpacman. Let me know what you think could be the impact of this story.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
One of our sponsors today is Vincero Watches, and they're giving you 15% off everything in the store. If you're a guy looking for the perfect way to refresh your style, one of the best investments you can make is in a high-quality wristwatch. Vincero is an American company that has made it possible for everyday people to afford a premium watch. Almost everything they sell is within the range of about $200, but it'll look like you spent a lot more. All of their watches are made in small batches from top quality materials, and they just look great. I went on their site and picked out a watch from their Icon Automatic collection. The one I got is in mesh matte black, and I love it. It's simple, sleek, elegant, goes great with just about anything I'm wearing, and I've gotten a ton of compliments on it. You'll get 15% off everything in their store when you go to davidpakman.com/Vincero. I've put the link right underneath this video.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Remember, in case you've forgotten, because I rarely mention it, we are a program mostly funded and supported by members who sign up at joinpakman.com. Consider yourself invited. Go to joinpakman.com. Grab a membership. Both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris had very solid appearances in interviews and press conferences over the weekend. I'm going to talk about it. Many of you have been saying, David, as important as it is to expose the insanity of Trump, now that we have a ticket, including not just the presidential nominee, but also a vice presidential nominee, let's highlight what they are doing and the contrast of sanity that they bring to the table. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's start with VP nominee Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris was interviewed by CNN's Dana Bash. This is one of the first major interviews that Kamala Harris did. And I know that the bar is so low because of Donald Trump and Mike Pence, but Kamala Harris was coherent. She met that low bar. She answered the questions she was asked. That's a higher bar for elected officials who often don't even answer the questions that they are asked. And she precisely and accurately expanded on each question to expose the pathetic failings of the Trump administration. She's not as far left as I am, Kamala Harris, but it would be a serious breath of fresh air just to have people who can speak and interact coherently in a position of power after the last 4 years. But Kamala Harris does more than that. She actually put on a clinic in terms of how to be interviewed and how to answer questions, not dodging, but answering and then doing more. So we're going to look at a few clips of this, and the context I would be thinking about as you watch, the one I was thinking about is, how is Mike Pence going to handle Kamala Harris during the upcoming debate? And I'm going to tell you a little bit later on when that debate will be happening and sort of the details of it. First clip, Dana Bash asks whether the economic recovery, albeit slow, is a threat to Biden-Harris, because as the economy improves, it could pull people back over to Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris very quickly gets to the heart of the issue, which is, this is a pandemic. You can't just go around sacrificing whatever or whoever you need to in order to temporarily improve jobs numbers. Take a look at her answer.
On the economy, we have new jobs numbers out at the end of the week, show that unemployment is at 8.4%. And not great, but about where President Obama had it in 2012. And so my question is, are you worried, despite the fact that it's, again, not great, that things are coming back to the point where Donald Trump could have more meat on the bone for his economic argument, that it's coming back?
Listen, I want the American people to be able to work. I want that we have jobs that are filled by the hardworking people who want to work and want to have the dignity that comes with good work. But there is no question that Donald Trump has been an abject failure and incompetent when it comes to addressing the severe job loss that has happened as a result of the pandemic, because he has failed to address the pandemic itself. And when we look at this path, hopefully at some point to recovery, his perspective cannot be our perspective, because his perspective for too long is to talk about how well the economy is doing based on how rich people are doing. We need to talk about how the economy is doing based on how working people are doing. And right now, working people are suffering. People are standing or sitting in their cars in food lines for hours.
What I like about this is that Kamala Harris won't allow the conversation to simply be about the unemployment rate is now coming down, or stocks are up, or we are getting jobs back that we lost. She points out that's garbage. It ignores why we are here. And that's the big picture that Kamala Harris, I hope, is going to be able to utilize and expose during the debate with Mike Pence. So if she does this with the Pence debate, anytime that Mike Pence points out, August saw some of the best new jobs numbers, she needs to point out not only is a partial recovery of what we lost not that good, all of it is much worse because of the failed handling of coronavirus. Then the topic that comes up is foreign interference. And I like what Kamala Harris does here in that she is asked about Russia. Do you believe Russia's meddling? And we know that there are some people who reject that idea, despite the fact that Mueller confirmed it, the Senate Select Report confirmed, et cetera. There are some people who have sort of like a visceral reaction anytime sometimes mentions Russia, they think it's a conspiracy theory. And I like what Kamala Harris does, which she acknowledges that, of course, Russia's doing this, but she immediately points to the domestic voter suppression that the Trump administration is engaged in and won't allow the story or the question to only be, do you believe Russia or not? She knows that just dealing with that could be a turnoff to some viewers. And she says Trump is suppressing the vote. Take a look at this.
Russia. Yeah. The Department of Homeland Security bulletin said that Russia is trying to amplify claims that mail-in voting will lead to widespread voting fraud and undermine the public's trust in the upcoming election. Are you worried that Russian interference could cost you the election?
I am clear that Russia interfered in the election of President of the United States in 2016. I serve on the Senate Intelligence Committee. We have published detailed reports about exactly what we believe happened. And I do believe that there will be foreign interference in the 2020 election and that Russia will be at the front of the line.
Could it cost you the White House?
Theoretically, of course. Yes.
And that's based on what you're hearing publicly, or you mentioned you're on the Senate Intelligence Committee.
Listen, let me just tell you something. We have to be a realist, and I'm a realist about it. Joe's a realist about it. We have classic voter suppression at play in this election coming up, where after the Supreme Court gutted the Voting Rights Act with Shelby v. Holder in 2013, dozens of states passed laws that were designed to suppress the black vote, to suppress students from voting, to suppress our indigenous people from voting, so much so that in North Carolina, a court of appeals said the law was passed with surgical precision to get in the way of black voters from voting.
This is a good focus point. This is a smart thing to focus on, because the idea of the current administration suppressing the vote is going to be much more universally compelling than an adjudication of to what degree do you believe Russia is doing this or doing that. And what I really like about this interview is Kamala Harris answers every question. She doesn't dodge the question, but then she expands with proper context. It's classic interview and media training. Answer the question and then expand the framing. Barack Obama was excellent at doing this. On the first question about the economy, notice she was asked, what about these improving job numbers? And she said, well, improving relative to the worst numbers we've ever had, and overall much worse because of Trump's failed response. That's how you answer a question. Here, do you believe Russian meddling? Yeah, I believe Russia will meddle. And this is way bigger because we've got domestic voter suppression, purging of voters in disproportionately black areas, and on and on. This is how you actually deal with issues in interviews. Now, one more clip, and I encourage you to check out the full interview. Kamala Harris on whether she would trust a coronavirus vaccine endorsed by Donald Trump. This is crucial. We know that Trump's CDC sent out a letter saying, be ready for a vaccine at the end of October or early November. She has to be careful here. Kamala Harris does, because anytime you say you won't trust a vaccine, you're starting to dabble in maybe being associated with anti-vaxxerism. And that's not what this is about. This is not about, do we trust vaccines in general? Do vaccines work in general? It's, is Trump, for political reasons, going to try to force something that's just not yet ready? Kamala Harris does a perfect job of refocusing the question.
Promised a coronavirus vaccine by the end of the year or maybe sooner. Would you trust that vaccine?
I think that we have learned since this pandemic started, but really before that, that there's very little that we can trust that comes out of Donald Trump's mouth. From the beginning of this pandemic, he has called it a hoax. He has muzzled the public health experts. He has minimized the seriousness of it. He has created false expectations for the American people and American families, even though if he had listened to the scientists and the experts, he would have understood the gravity of it and the power that he as president of the United States has to actually save lives. And none of those were his priorities. His priority was to do whatever he thought was politically expedient. And no, I would not trust his word. I would trust the word of public health experts and scientists, but not Donald Trump.
This is really a clinic on how to answer. It's not, I do or don't trust the vaccine. It's, I don't make a decision on whether the vaccine is okay on Trump's word because Trump is unreliable. It's not about vaccines being the problem and getting into maybe, oh, is she maybe against vaccines? No, it's about, I don't trust Trump's word on anything. And as a media literacy person, as a fan of the techniques of interviewing and being interviewed, this is really well done by Kamala Harris. I am very much looking forward to the VP debate, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Okay, so it wasn't just Kamala Harris who had a great interview this weekend, which we looked at already. Joe Biden did an event in Delaware about rebuilding the American economy, about rebuilding the country, really, once Donald Trump is gone. And first of all, there are Trump people who say Biden won't leave the basement, as they like to say. Biden did an event. He's not scared to speak. He spoke perfectly fine, seemed far sharper than Donald Trump. Biden also took media questions. Again, the Trump people say Biden won't do it. Biden would crumble under questioning. Biden doesn't know where he is. He can't put together a sentence. Didn't go that way. And Joe Biden was asked about that Trump conspiracy group. I'm not even going to name it because YouTube instantly demonetizes. If you mention that group, YouTube instantly demonetizes it. But let me put it this way. It's related to the letter that comes after P in the alphabet. Let's just leave it there. I'm sure you know what I mean. And Biden is asked about that, and Biden just destroys it and goes very hard and says people need mental health services. Now, Biden is right about that. This is a crazy group with outrageous beliefs or claims. But some of the people that subscribe to those views might get elected in November, as Alex Kaplan from Media Matters told us last week, which is disturbing to recognize. Check out Joe Biden's response.
Of the QAnon, the people who believe in that conspiracy, what they think is true about America, that there's sex trafficking and a conspiracy against President Trump. And what would you say to President Trump for not rejecting that conspiracy and the people who believe in it?
I've been a big supporter of mental health. I'd recommend the people who believe it maybe should take advantage while it still exists in the Affordable Care Act. It's bizarre. Totally bizarre. And now, have you guys found that plane load of people in uniforms and weapons and flying around? I mean, have you found them yet? Is anybody even from, and by the way, I respect conservative and liberal points of view in the press. Anybody found that plane? What in God's name are we doing? Look at how it makes us look around the world. It's mortifying. It's embarrassing, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous. If the president doesn't know better, which he has to know better, then my Lord, we're in much more trouble than I ever thought we were. It's bizarre.
What in God's name are we doing is sort of, in my mind, the slogan for the last 4 years. It's a relevant phrase, not just when it comes to this group, but it's a relevant phrase, big picture, for the administration. Joe Biden very clearly saying what many of us, what many in my audience have been thinking, which is, how does the entire country not realize what the world realizes, which is that we are a laughing stock with Donald Trump in the White House. We have become a joke. Joe Biden saying it. And then Joe Biden again showing more energy this weekend than we've seen from him in a while, because he was very fired up about the story that Donald Trump said troops who died in combat are losers and suckers. Biden visibly furious and disgusted with Donald Trump. This is a couple minutes almost, but I want to show you the entire answer.
Quite frankly, if what is written in the Atlantic is true, it's disgusting. And it affirms what most of us believe to be true, that Donald Trump is not fit to be the job of president, to be the commander-in-chief. The president reportedly said, and I emphasize reportedly said, that those who sign up to serve instead of doing something more lucrative are suckers. Let me be real clear. When my son was an assistant U.S. attorney and he volunteered to go to Kosovo while the war was going on as a civilian, he wasn't a sucker. When my son volunteered and joined the United States military as the Attorney General and went to Iraq for a year, won the Bronze Star and other commendations, he wasn't a sucker. The servicemen and women he served with, particularly those who did not come home, were not losers. If these statements are true, the president should humbly apologize to every Gold Star mother and father and every Blue Star family that he's denigrated and insulted. Who the heck does he think he is? If it's true, and based on other things he said, I believe the article is true, I'd ask you all the rhetorical question. How do you feel? How would you feel if you had a kid in Afghanistan right now? How would you feel if you lost a son, daughter, husband, wife?
This was also really instructive to from the standpoint of what I call DDS, Democratic Derangement Syndrome. You simultaneously had Republicans criticizing that answer for diametrically opposed reasons. You had some Republicans saying, oh my goodness, Joe Biden's unhinged. He's going crazy about fake news. And then you had other Republicans who, because the story has been quadruply corroborated, believe the story, saying, what's wrong with Biden? Biden should have been more mad. It almost seems like he was low energy. He could barely even really get that. That's weird. Why wasn't Biden more furious about the comment if he believes that does he not support the troops? So if you take every side of an issue, as Donald Trump and Trumpists typically do, you've got this sort of something for everybody framing, which I've mentioned for some time. Remember, Joe Biden said right before Super Tuesday, we have to beat Trump and the Republicans, but we can't become like them. And I think that in our criticism of Donald Trump about this suckers and losers thing, in our continued exploration of Donald Trump's denial of strokes that nobody actually accused him of having in all of this, we have to make sure that we don't become like them. I tend to agree with Joe Biden. I want to win. But if we win the way they win, have we really won? And I've talked about this before, and I think it's something to keep in mind, especially as we get closer to the debates, which I'll be talking about next. Just imagine if we see a fired up Joe Biden at the debates. I don't think it will come off as unhinged. I think it will come off as genuine, and it will actually reflect the feelings of many in this country, including some of us who know that when every week is a scandal, you start to become a little desensitized. So I was glad to see this. I think we're going to see more of it. Make sure you're following us on Instagram at David Pakman Show. While you're there, follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. You can see some of my recent prepping elements that I've purchased. Quick break, back after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
What if you could read 10 books in just one sitting? That's exactly what one of my favorite apps lets you do. It's called Blinkist, and what they do is take thousands of popular nonfiction books. They condense them down into text or audio that you can consume in 15 minutes. Blinkist makes sure that you're getting all of the important core insights from each book. So it's perfect for exploring a book you otherwise wouldn't have time for. If there's a full book you're thinking about buying, you can use Blinkist to get a sample first. Just think how much you can enrich yourself by being able to soak up an entire nonfiction book in just 15 minutes. I recently read A Brief History of Time, of course, by the great Stephen Hawking. This is a book that I have been aware of for so long, and other things got in the way, and it was fantastic to check it out on Blinkist. Blinkist has books on politics, philosophy, science. They have 27 different nonfiction categories, and a subscription is only about $8 a month, and you get the entire library. But you can try it totally free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put the link right underneath this video.
Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Okay, what I have for you next, I have to admit, this is a pleasure to watch. I am really enjoying the entire Trump administration just falling all over itself to try to deny this blockbuster bombshell story about Donald Trump calling troops who died in combat losers and suckers. I already told you when The Atlantic reported it, Trump denied it. Then the AP corroborated it. They kept denying it. Fox confirmed it. Chaos at Fox News. CNN now has quadruply confirmed it, and they have no idea what to do. And at one of those Gong Show press briefings Friday, Trump said both that the source for the story doesn't exist and that the sources for the story are lying. So hold on. Are they real and lying, or they don't exist and are made up by the media outlets? All four media outlets. Which is it? And this is amazing. And Trump barely able to speak. You will hear him say here 3.5 years. It just makes no sense. He's making no sense.
Have gone after me more than any president in the United States in history, in the history of the United States. And it's a shame. It's a shame. And despite that, we've done more in the first 3.5 years than any administration. There's been no administration that's done more. When you add it all up, there's been no, despite all of the horrible political games that have been played, but there's nobody that's been able to do what I've done. And that includes the Great Mission Act, because what Obama passed was a joke. It was a joke. And we took it to a level that nobody thought possible. And that includes accountability. So it's a disgrace that somebody's allowed to write things like that. It could have been, a lot of times the sources aren't sources that don't exist. And sometimes the sources are just people that are disgruntled former so-called employees.
As Aaron Rupar said on Twitter, it's a sort of choose your own adventure here. Is it there are fake sources made up by the media outlets, all four? Or is it that these are disgruntled former employees who are lying? The briefing didn't get any better. Here, Trump started to attack his former chief of staff, John Kelly, on the suspicion that John Kelly might be the source. But the question Trump was asked was, did you disparage American soldiers? And Trump, instead of denying it, attacks John Kelly and then says that also the weather was the reason why he wasn't able to go to that cemetery in France. The fog prevented him from going to honor the troops, a claim which has been widely debunked since.
Wasn't even able to function in the last number of months. He was not able to function. He was sort of a tough guy. By the time he got eaten up in this world, it's a different world than he was used to, he was unable to function. And I told him, John, you're going to have to go. Please give me a letter of resignation. And we did that. And now he goes out and badmouths. Now, there are people that are jealous. There are people that are upset that they're not here anymore. There are people that we've done an incredible job. The virus came in, and now we're doing an incredible job again. We're going to build it up bigger than it was before the virus came in. But I don't know that it was him. I haven't seen that. I mean, I see anonymous, but it could have been a guy like a John Kelly, because he was, just so you understand, he was a very, you look at some of his news conferences, what happened to him. He got eaten alive. He was unable to handle the pressure of this job. This job was a tough job. Mark Meadows doing a great job, but Kelly was unable to do that. And as far as that day, I mean, we have so much proof as to going to I went to Paris and the environs, and I was all set to go. They had a rainstorm, the likes of which you've rarely seen. The fog was so great. It was as dense as I've ever seen.
Just unable to stick to any topic ever. Then Trump said again that the Atlantic story is a hoax, ignoring, of course, that at this point it had been corroborated by the AP and Fox News, and after this briefing by CNN as well.
I know you spoke earlier about the Atlantic story, and you referenced the number of administration officials who have come out to support your...
No, we have 11 people. I was just told we have 11 people. There is nobody that feels more strongly about our soldiers, our wounded warriors, our soldiers that died in war than I do. It's a hoax. Just like the fake dossier was a hoax, just like the Russia was a hoax. It was a total hoax, no collusion. Just like so many other things, it's a hoax. And you'll hear more of these things, totally unrelated, as we get closer and closer to election. The magazine is a failing magazine, and nobody called me. Nobody called me from the magazine, said, do you have a comment about it? No, they just write whatever they want to write, because they figure you can't get sued. You can get sued, but it's a very hard bringing lawsuits.
Of course, the other things Trump mentions also aren't hoaxes. The dossier was real with lots of accurate things and many things that are still unconfirmed. The Russia thing was not a hoax. Dozens were arrested. The Mueller report couldn't exonerate Trump. The Senate Select report pointed out that a lot of the allegations were true. So none of them were hoaxes. And then Trump wrapping up hilariously by assailing the reporters in the room as children asking terrible questions, and then bizarrely thanking them for their presence.
Biden getting asked questions that are really meant for a child to answer. Anybody could answer. And I look at the level of question that you people ask. I mean, honestly, it's disgraceful. So I want to thank you all very much. We appreciate it. And we're doing very well. We're very, very proud of what's happened with respect to the economy.
I just love that. Your questions are childish. You people are disgraceful. Thank you very much for being here at my press briefing, which couldn't exist without you actually being here. This is a man falling apart. And this was only part of the press briefing. I want to kind of separate it into stuff related to the soldier story and then other things that happened at the rally. I mean, I'm sorry. That's a Freudian slip. Other things that happened at the briefing right after this, because there is much more to discuss. So now that we've looked specifically at Donald Trump's press briefing comments about the horrifying Atlantic story, which has now been quadruply corroborated by the AP, Fox News, and CNN, there's a ton of other material from this weird press briefing that I want to go over, especially because Kamala Harris, in her interview on CNN, which we looked at, discusses a lot of the material from this press briefing. So this first clip, this is just incoherent. I don't know what Trump is saying here. Can you figure out what he's talking about?
Now they want to stop regulations. They want to bring up regulations to a level, stop the things that we're doing, which are at a much smaller level, and bring up regulations at a level that nobody's ever seen before. They want to do.
I beg you. Try to figure out what Donald Trump is talking about there. Donald Trump then absurdly claims that economic shutdowns to combat the virus kill more people than the virus itself. Now, I'm going to deal with the numbers in a moment. First, take a look at what Trump said.
want to abolish American energy. I mean, that's what's going to happen. Adopt disastrous trade deals and inflict a devastating shutdown. As you know, he said we want to shut it down. We would be willing to shut it down. And you don't shut down when we're setting records. And by the way, we're rounding the corner. We're rounding the corner on the virus. Joe Biden's blanket shutdown would collapse our economy, would cause countless deaths from suicide, drug, alcohol abuse, heart disease, and more. You know, shutdowns cause a lot of problems, a lot of very serious problems, more so than the virus itself.
So we're approaching 200,000 deaths from coronavirus. The shutdowns have obviously not caused 200,000 deaths or anywhere close to it. Now, let's be thorough. Are deaths of despair a thing? Yes, of course. We've reported on that on this program. They've been a problem in the United States for economic reasons for a long time. Deaths of despair are a real thing. Can later diagnoses of cancer, for example, or other conditions, because people are opting out of going to the doctor right now, can that lead to premature death? Of course it can. Of course. Can being in quarantine cause somebody to commit suicide? It could happen. But we've had 200,000 coronavirus deaths. It's insulting to suggest that that is not as bad as the number of deaths we've had due to the shutdowns. It's ludicrous and it's laughable. Then Donald Trump again suggests this idea that states that are closed for political reasons to hurt him, and that the day after the election, they're all going to open. Take a look.
North Carolina, I think that Michigan and Pennsylvania and other states, they should open. The Democrat governor should open the states. They'll open them on November 4th, but they should open them now. It's very unfair to the people to have those shutdowns continuing at the level that they're continuing. Democrats are insisting on it.
The shutdowns, two things on this. Number one, the shutdowns aren't really continuing. I mean, to different degrees, even Massachusetts, which is being very careful, and there's like sort of limited indoor dining. Not every restaurant's doing it. A lot of colleges are going remote. There's really no full shutdowns going on at this point in time. And of course, the shutdowns were not done for political reasons. No governor is on November 4th going to say, hey, we can now open wide open now. But we can now open wide. That's another Trump fantasy. It's not going to happen. Then Trump spoke about the vaccine. Again, this is tracking with a lot of what Kamala Harris talked about in her interview with CNN. Trump says we can probably have the vaccine during October. And you might have noticed that Trump's timeline for the vaccine keeps getting pushed up more and more.
% more, greater excess mortality than the United States. A lot of you don't want to report that. And if we took New York out of the equation, there's nobody even close. The job we've done is incredible, and we don't get any credit for it, but we've done an incredible job. Through Operation Warp Speed, we have 3 vaccines in the final stage of clinical trials. Yesterday, Pfizer announced, I just spoke to the head of Pfizer, great guy, they announced that it expects to have the results of its trial very, very shortly, next month. But very shortly. We remain on track to deliver a vaccine before the end of the year and maybe even before November 1st. We think we could probably have it sometime during the month of October. And Pfizer is among the leaders, as you know.
Kamala was asked, would you trust a vaccine that a Trump FDA approves in October? And she said, I don't trust Trump. And it is not about anti-vaxxer. It's about Trump being the constant liar. Then, and this is just wild, Trump on social distancing. Listen to this, and I'll tell you why it's crazy in a moment.
And we need everybody to be careful, to apply common sense and do all of the things that we've told you to do as quickly, as much as you can. Social distancing, wearing a mask whenever the distancing is not possible, and staying with a group that you know. Let's just try and get through this one weekend, and I think we have a chance of doing that. Just social distance, wash your hands, all of the hygiene things that we speak about, and we're really rounding the turn.
So Trump says that, but Trump is doing rallies. Trump just did a rally in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Everybody standing together, no masks, huge crowd, no COVID tests, no hand washing, everybody crammed into a tight space to wait for Donald Trump to show up. He's saying at press briefings, masks, space between people, all this stuff. And then he's holding optional events where it is impossible to do it. Lastly, Trump, or a couple more clips, Trump can't understand the English of the same Indian reporter who's been there for years with the press corps. Trump tells him he didn't catch anything other than India.
Thank you, Mr. President. During the conventions, During the conventions, Kimberly and Don Jr. had an outreach to the Indian Americans community with a video called 4 More Years for You, which has gone viral among the Indian Americans in the battleground states. So my question is, would Kimberly, Don Jr. and Ivanka Trump, who are very popular among Indian Americans, would be campaigning on your behalf among the Indian Americans with your views on India-US relationship?
Well, I didn't understand everything you said. I know India.
Trump only understood India. There you go. And then the reporter tries again, and all Trump can say is he likes India, and they like him in India, and India is a very big country.
My question was about Indian Americans. Do you think they are voting for you? Are they supporting you?
I do. We had an event in Houston, as you know, and it was a fantastic event. I was invited by Prime Minister Modi, and this was this was at where they play football, Houston football team, and it was incredible. It was actually incredible, and the Prime Minister could not have been more generous. We have great support from India. We have great support from Prime Minister Modi, and I would think that the people, Indian people, would be voting for Trump. I also, as you know, went to India just prior to the pandemic setting in, because India's been hit very hard. Left really about a week before that. And we had an incredible time. What we saw, the people are so incredible. It's really an incredible place, an incredible country. And it's definitely big. It's definitely big.
Trump also adds in that if the Indian people were given the opportunity, they would vote Trump. This is indistinguishable from parody. This is impossible to satirize. How does SNL make a parody of a press briefing like that? We cannot withstand much more of this. We really can't. We have to remove this guy.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The David Pakman Show depends on your support, and the easiest way is through membership, which includes the world-famous bonus show, as well as commercial-free audio and video streams of the show just for members. Sign up today at joinpakman.com. Coupon code saves you 40%. Vote soon 18.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So we've now confirmed not just the dates, but also the moderators and the locations of the upcoming 3 presidential debates and the 1 vice presidential debate. And Joe Biden is demanding live fact-checking during the debates, which obviously Donald Trump will oppose, but we're going to get to that in a minute. There's still some debate over whether one or both of the candidates are going to back out. You have some Trumpists saying Biden's going to find a way out, that Biden cognitively can't do it. He would be crushed by Trump's incredible intellect and cognitive abilities, and that Biden will find some way out. He'll say a few days before the event that he has COVID or something like that. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think Biden very much understands that not debating would not be particularly good for him. On the other hand, there are those who think Trump is going to try to find some way out, either because he'd be scared that he won't be able to do to Biden what he did to Hillary Clinton in terms of kind of stalking behind her and standing physically close, and that I think that they're probably going to debate, if I had to bet. Now, the debates are going to be on Fox News, C-SPAN, and NBC. CNN shut out of the debates for the first time since 2008. Looking at the details, September 29th, Chris Wallace will moderate a debate on Fox News in Cleveland, Ohio. It will have 6 15-minute segments with 2 minutes per question. I'm going to get to that in a moment. On October 7th, there will be a VP debate. Susan Page from USA Today will be moderating it. It'll be at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. It will be 9 10-minute segments, 2 minutes per question. The second presidential will be on October 15th. Steve Scully from C-SPAN will do it in Miami, Florida. It'll be a town minute format with 2 minutes per question with an additional minute as needed. And then lastly, the third debate will be moderated by Kristen Welker of NBC on October 22nd. That's very close to voting day. Same format as the first debate. So a few thoughts. First of all, the format favors Donald Trump. Anything shorter favors Trump. And you really can't do anything in 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, the issues that these individuals are dealing with are complex issues where if you had a deep understanding of them, you would want 3 to 4 minutes just to lay out that you understand the issue. That's how you would have serious conversation. These debates are not set up for information purposes. These debates are set up for entertainment purposes. And the shorter it is, the more it favors Donald Trump, because I believe it's clear Joe Biden is the one able to go deeper in terms of policy than Donald Trump. So that's number one. Now, number two, the late debates. The Trump administration has been trying to push, or the Trump campaign, for an additional debate early this month because they recognize the more people vote early, the fewer people left to convince will be remaining on October 22nd. And that's true. I do think that on October 22nd, you're going to have a smaller portion of the electorate, arguably than in any prior election, due to early voting and expanded absentee ballot access. That probably is good for Joe Biden in the sense that it's Trump who is likely to pull some kind of October surprise. And the more people that have already sent in their ballots or voted early, whenever Trump pulls it, the less effective it's going to be for him. Now, on the fact checking, Biden previously said he wants some kind of live fact checking of the president on screen. Trump's obviously against it. It doesn't seem like it's going to happen. And so it's going to be up to Joe Biden to do the fact checking. I don't need debates this year. I've said it's never been clearer to me who we should be supporting. But for those who want to see debates, and again, they'll be entertaining. I don't think they'll be super informative. We will be doing live streams of all four, the 3 presidential and the 1 VP debate. I think the VP debate, Kamala Harris is just going to eat Mike Pence up and spit him out. I just don't see any way in which Pence gets through it unscathed. His followers won't care. They'll refuse to acknowledge it, but I think it's going to be very, very bad for Mike Pence. So Donald Trump continues to deny that he had mini strokes. And again, this is only raising more questions because the upcoming book from Michael Schmidt from the New York Times doesn't allege Trump had strokes. And Trump continuing to bring it up is starting to put more attention on it than there would be otherwise. And the backstory, of course, is that Michael Schmidt's book claims that when Donald Trump abruptly went to Walter Reed Hospital in 2019 for that unscheduled visit, that it was some kind of urgent medical situation. He doesn't say what kind it was, but he does say that Mike Pence was put on notice. Be prepared to take over as president because Donald Trump may need to go under anesthesia. Trump has brought up this issue of mini strokes, which is not a claim that's actually made in the book. Trump introduces the idea of strokes in a tweet last week where he said, quote, "It never ends. Now they are trying to say that your favorite president, me, went to Walter Reed Medical Center having suffered a series of mini strokes. Never happened to this candidate. Fake news. Perhaps they're referring to another candidate from another party." Then Trump brings it up again during this Latrobe, Pennsylvania Corona rally, which I covered last week. Trump spent several minutes on this, again, telling this totally implausible story that he said, hey, you know what? Let's go over to Walter Reed last minute to get a jump on next year's physical. It was never believable. But again, Trump brings up mini strokes. Take a look at this.
No, but the new one is, I went for a physical. The doctor said to me, sir, would you like to go over to Walter Reed? It's incredible. By the way, the job they do on people that have been just really hurt are heroes. And the job they do is incredible. But, sir, would you like to go over and do a physical? You have some time. You know why I had time? Some deal. Oh, it was China. I decided not to see China because they didn't like the way they were doing business, okay? Does that make sense? So the doctor, White House doctor, highly respected, Sean Conley. Sir, would you like to go over and do your physical, do a piece of it or finish it or whatever it was, but do a physical? I said, I don't know. I'm not in love with the idea. Well, if you do it, we don't have to do it. So, okay, let's go. Come on. So we went. And we're driving. Now, you have to understand there are 100 cars. You see what happens here. It's like the plane times 50. So the cars are driving all over. It's about a 20-minute drive. And we get to the hospital. I get out. I was there probably for an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then yesterday I read that I had strokes. CNN, fake news CNN right there. No, it's mini strokes, they called them. I don't know what a mini stroke is, but it's not good. And there could be a day, and I'll admit, I said, hey, it happens to all of us, right? Except these young ones, it's never going to happen to them. They're not looking at that. But you know what happens? But nothing happens. So I went in. I did that part of the physical. The end result was he's very healthy. They're very unhappy when they heard that result.
So first of all, imagine that this is the behavior of an American president. Just let that sink in for a second. But going further than that, sometimes people will write to me. They'll say, David, why do you keep making a big deal out of this totally outrageous behavior, given that it's so common and we've become so used to it? That's exactly why. We should not be used to it, and we cannot allow this type of insanity to be normalized. That's why I keep talking about it, to try to fight the normalization. To get back to the main topic, this is crazy because Trump keeps bringing up how he didn't have strokes. Nobody alleged that he had strokes. Now, I know it's been speculated by random people, but the allegations in the book that Trump is responding to don't mention strokes. It's sort of like when Trump started to bizarrely focus in on acing his cognitive test, which is a test that is not difficult. And it's just meant to screen out serious dementia. Trump calling it a difficult test. It's wild stuff. It is unforced errors. Trump talking about he and Biden should take drug tests before debates because maybe Biden took something before his debate with Bernie. The speculation, of course, is that it's Trump who sometimes seems all hopped up with the dilated pupils and the sweating. It's constant projection of this kind, and it's now become almost like we're headed to some kind of boxing match with a weigh-in, anti-doping screenings, more so than we are presidential debates. As far as the strokes go, why does Trump keep talking about it? Doesn't this just raise the suspicion even more that he's constantly now talking about strokes nobody claimed that he had? Very, very strange stuff. And listen, my position is the following. I don't know what happened to Trump on that day. What I do know is that the story of saying, hey, you know what? Let's right now, let's drive over to Walter Reed to get a jump on my physical for next year and spend hours there. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't pass the sniff test. That's what I can tell you. The fact that Trump keeps mentioning strokes is certainly weird, if not concerning. We have a voicemail number. That number is 219-2-DAVID-P. This voicemail is a good voicemail, aside from being disgusting, to talk about what we can control and what we cannot control. Take a listen to this.
Put this on your freaking stupid sideshow. You know you're nothing but a greasy Venezuelan. Why don't you go back there and grease that place up and you sit there and you throw your hands around? You know what you look like? A wounded freaking chicken. You're an asshole, and Biden is going to lose and lose big. So screw you, you ass.
There you go. So, of course, on the facts, I've never been to Venezuela. I'm Argentinian. I am not a fan of the Hugo Chavez, Nicolas Maduro regime. I have no real interest in going to Venezuela, period. So that's number one. That's just sort of that xenophobia of, listen, South America, it's all kind of the same, doesn't really matter, etc. Okay. This is an opportunity to talk about what we can and we cannot control, because the caller does say Biden's going to lose and he's going to lose big. And I think that in this moment in time, it is a very sort of good opportunity to understand the teachings of the Stoics. I'm talking about Marcus Aurelius. I'm talking about Seneca. I'm talking about, I don't know if it's pronounced Epictetus or Epictetus, where we need to understand that there are really three categories of things in the world. They are the things over which we have total control. Like, for example, I can have total control about over my goals. I decide what are my goals. I have complete control. There are things over which I have no control. Like, is the sun going to rise tomorrow? I have no control over that. There's no point in worrying about that and thinking about that. And then there's the area over which we have some control. The election is one of those cases. I can control the message I put out on this program. I can control how I vote. I can control whether I make the best effort possible to convince people that they should vote and they should vote for Joe Biden. But that's as far as my control goes. And, you know, all of this stuff about people expecting me to cry on election night if Biden doesn't win, I'm going to be very sad because of what it means for our country. But I'm going to know I did everything I could. And then we'll just have to proceed forward, right? Life will go on. It will be a worse life, certainly, for the average person if Joe Biden doesn't win. But, you know, all these people with these personal vendettas, they want to see me cry on election night. This is not about me. This is not about me. But I do think it's a good opportunity for us to understand, where does our sphere of influence end? And as long as we feel that we did everything we could, that's as far as we really have control. Something to keep in mind in advance of whatever the results are on November 3rd, or whatever day we find out the results. We've got a great bonus show for you today. We will talk about Labor Day as a possible coronavirus spike event. We will talk about young Americans living at home with their parents in greater numbers than we've seen for a long time, since the Great Depression, in fact, and much more. Get access to today's bonus show and every bonus show by becoming a member at joinpacman.com. Thanks so much for watching today's episode. Just a reminder, today's program was made possible by Vincero Watches, the American watchmaker building super quality wristwatches, but making them affordable for everyday people. And they're giving you 15% off when you go to davidpakman.com/Vincero. Today's show also sponsored by Blinkist. Blinkist is the app that lets you read or listen to an entire nonfiction book in 15 minutes. And you can try Blinkist for free and get 25% off a subscription when you go to Blinkist.com/David Pakman. I've put that link down below underneath the video.